All right, what do we explain? And the Rebbe decided to talk about the passing away of the second Rebbe of Chabad. And the reason that he decided to talk about this is because it occurs on next Shabbat, which that's when we read this Torah portion, Vayetze. The second Rebbe of Chabad was really when the Chabad started living in Lubavitch, right? Right after the first Rebbe of Chabad passed away, so the second Rebbe of Chabad, he established the town of Lubavitch as being the center of Chabad activities. And the reason was because it was a well-known place where mystics would go before that, and it was a secluded place. You could think deeply, and also the non-Jews they were very friendly, and you can get along with everybody. Okay. But his thing was that the second Rebbe of Chabad, he really opened up and explained in very great detail and in a very simple way a lot of the ideas of Hasidut. He's called Bina, understanding. He tried to make it as understandable as possible. Okay, he was born and passed away on the same exact date, Tet, the 9th day of Kislev. And even more in his life, the day after that, the 10th day of Kislev, which was like a year or something, a little bit less than a year before he passed away, he got out of prison. He was imprisoned, just like his father had been imprisoned, what was it, 18 years earlier or something? You have to look, I forgot the dates. 18 years old, and his father miraculously got out. That's the 19th day of Kislev, but 18 years earlier. And he got out of prison also on the 10th day of Kislev. So he was born on the 10th day, on the 9th day of Kislev. He got out of prison on the 10th day of Kislev, and he passed away on the 9th day. So he was born and passed away on the 9th day of Kislev and got out on the 10th day of Kislev. So the Rebbe says, so what? So the Rebbe said, I'll tell you what. The purpose of the Jewish people is to fix up the world, especially the tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are people that have taken on themselves to be totally devoted only to correcting the world according to the way God wants. And part of the world is themselves. So the day that a person is born, that's the day when he's given this task of fixing up the world. And the day that a person dies is the day when he has finished at least his part in this task. If it comes out to be exactly the same day, this hints at a certain type of completion, a certain type of holiness, wholesomeness, which the Rebbe is saying it is possible to achieve. This wholesomeness, not just spiritual, but also that it should be revealed in such a mundane, seemingly meaningless thing as the date that you're born and die. I mean, everybody is born and dies on some date. So, I mean, what's the big deal that it's born on this? That a person becomes a big tzaddik and he serves God, and that not everybody does, and everybody doesn't have to do. Right? It's not necessary. It's very unusual that a person serves God every single moment of his life to make this world a better place, never thinks about himself, only about improving the world and bringing godliness to the world. That's very unusual. But to be born on a certain day and to die on a certain day, that's not unusual at all. Right? Even dogs and cats are born on certain days and they die on certain days. You know, the Havda, what's the difference? So the Rebbe says, okay, well, when a tzaddik does it, that's the whole point, to take the most mundane, seemingly meaningless things and to put meaning, even more, to put perfection into them. So it's a biurenya. Let's explain this. To proceed. Because in the end, everything in the world is meaningful, right? Every detail in the world is meaningful. God is creating everything. That's why we make a blessing, 100 blessings a day. Melech Olam, God is the king of the universe, king of the universe, king of the universe, king of the universe. What does it mean, king of the universe? The king of the universe means that the universe is not, how do you say, meaningless. There's no detail in the universe that's not part of God's kingship. Right? And if you think that it is, so you're defying the king. Okay, let's explain. Back to Moshiach, Parshas Shavua, this week's Torah portion, which is called Vayetze, and also Vayishlach that we read at Mincha. The main story of the Torah is Jacob is not last week, Parshat Toldot, That there it talks about how Yaakov was when he was in Eretz Israel in Beersheba. The main story of Jacob begins this week when Yaakov goes out of his birthplace. Parshat Vayetze. Shaboma Dubar that it talks about Vayetze Yaakov me Beersheba v'yelech Harona. This week's Torah portion starts up when Yaakov goes out into the world, which that's the real beginning of the life of Yaakov. Al Yitzias Yaakov mi Beersheba. He goes out from Beersheba, which Beersheba was a wonderful place. It was good. Sheva means because of the oath, because of the satisfied, because 7 wells. And he went to Haran, which Haran is the worst place in the world. Haran Avshel Makom. It's the burning anger of God. Where did he go? To Lavan Arami. To Lavan, who he was like a big boss over there in Haran. Haran, that was his turf, his home ground. Right over there, he was a king, the king of the tricksters. In Kol Yanim, Abilti Ritzuyim, with all the bad things that were over there. Yerida Hachi Gadola, in other words, Jacob made a tremendous descent from the house of his father, Yitzchak and Rivka, where they loved him. He went to a place which was a no man's land, and the people there hated him. Look, and therefore Pachad Yaakov there said he was afraid. And Nizkak, he had to have a promise from God. Shmarticha, I will protect you. Even more, in Haran, not only did Yaakov make it through this terrible place, which is called Haran, but that's where he established his house, his household. Almost all of the tribes. Rachel, Yosef was born later on the way, and Benjamin was also born later on. Yesod shall Am Yisrael, the whole foundation of the Jewish people. Even after Yaakov finished his work by Lavan in Haran. Benjamin was born on the way. So Benjamin, he was born, right, not in Haran, but all the others were. Okay, why it's like I know people that shluchim, the emissaries of the Rebbe, they're outside of Israel. They go to these bizarre places, and it's a family. So the woman becomes pregnant, right? And in order to give birth, they go back to Israel. They go back to Israel to give birth. It's dangerous, right? And here we see that Yaakov went to Haran, the worst place in the world, and that's where he gave birth to all of his children. Terrible place. Haran, v'hitkonen l'shuv el Beit Aviv. Even after Yaakov finished all of his work and he wants to go back, like he became V'shavti b'shalom Beit Aviv, and afterwards God said no. Shuv lava. God told him to go back to your land. Hari b'makom she Yaakov yakayim tzivui. Instead, what happened? And immediately go back to Israel. Matchil rakasipur shel Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov, he wants to go back home. All of a sudden, comes the whole story of Esav v'yishlach Yaakov, next week's Torah portion. That all of a sudden, Esav is coming to meet him, and Yaakov had to send angels or messengers, whatever, to deal with his murderous brother, with all the details that were there in Parshas Vayishlach. So we see that what happened, that Yaakov had tremendous troubles. In the beginning, he was living in Beersheba, and everything was wonderful. And something like we talked about before, the Jewish people in the desert, everything was wonderful. They had no problems. And God said, leave that. I don't want you live in your comfort zone. You have to go back and make the whole entire world a comfort zone. The whole entire world. And it won't be a comfort zone also. The world will become a dynamic place. Go out and do it. So Yaakov said, well, what do I got to do? He said, you go down to Lavan. Yaakov is already trembling. Go to this place called Haran. It's trembling even more. That's where you're going to get married and have a family, raise up your family over there under the worst conditions possible. You're going to have to work day and night. You're going to get tricked all the time. Have a good day. Right? So Yaakov said, hey, well, what type of a thing is that? God said, don't worry about it. I'll protect you. I'll be with you and everything you do. And then when you finish, you're going to have a family, then you can come back. So he went and he brought up a family over there. He's coming back. All of a sudden comes his murderous brother that's been looking around for him for all this time, right, to kill him. But Yishlach Yaakov, and he had to send special emissaries to save him. Shari Lechior, at first glance, Icarus, but the main story of the service of Jacob, Bator Echad Mia Avot. He was one of the fathers of Judaism. He was what we call a vehicle for godliness. But he was not only was one of the fathers, he was the choice of the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was the choices. From Abraham came a bad son, came Yishmael. From Yitzchak came Esav. From Yaakov, all of his children were perfect. He was the choice of the forefathers. So it should have been Avodas Kadosh, Eretz Israel. He should have stayed in the land of Israel. How can you make so much trouble for your chosen one, God? Hey, the Jewish people are chosen. Wouldn't make all this trouble for the Jews, especially for Yaakov, right? Rak b'kitzur, im b'chlal, al enyani asakavim lavan, harami, be'esav Russia. It should have said the main thing, stay in the land of Israel, temporarily go to, Esav and Edom. That should have been a little bit in the Torah. But the main thing is he should have stayed in Israel, raised his family. The main thing that the Torah tells us about Abraham and Yitzchak, especially Yitzchak, because he never left Israel, was what they did in Israel. And the main thing that tells us about Yaakov is what he did outside of Israel. And how he dealt with these evil people, and the whole life is terrible in the experiences that he had. Why? The explanation is, if he's the chosen one of God, so come on, God should protect him. Why should you make him so much trouble? That's very discouraging. Everyone will say, hey, listen, Yaakov said we should worship the God of the world. Said, oh yeah, you worship that God, you're going to be like Yaakov. You want to have his problems? Oh no, not me. Not me. Okay, so come back. Let's worship the frog god, or the moon, or the sun, or something like that. And then have an easy life. Why did Yaakov have such troubles? Why did God send him out? Why did he have to raise his family in the most unsuitable conditions? According to the explanation is like this. According to what's known that Maisa Avosim Labanim, that everything that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did, it's a sign to us. We can understand that this story in the Torah of the Maisa, of all the deeds that Yaakov did with Lavan and with Esav, it must be a source, a sign, or a teaching, a horah to us. Who is the teaching for the sons of Jacob? Me and you, the Jewish people. The Emsos, the Sipur, by means of the story of Yaakov Avinu, that Yaakov went out and Yaakov sent sent messengers to Esav. This is where he met up with Lavan. When he went up, this is where he met up with Esav. Shezui Apam Rishon. This is the first time in the Torah, Shebo Medubar, that it talks about Barichot Pratim, and such tremendous detail with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the world. Abraham was called the father of all nations. We don't really see that he did so much with the nations, Abraham. Yitzchak, the same thing, a little bit. He had a connection with Avimelech. No big deal. Yaakov, and the Torah doesn't really tell us any details about Abraham and Yitzchak's connection to the world, which is not the case. Yaakov, it talks about tremendous detail what happened to Yaakov outside of Israel. All the sheep what he was with, all the children that were born, all the problems Lavan treated and cheated him, and Esav, what Esav said, and how Esav came to meet him, and how Esav wanted to kill him, and finally he kissed him. This tells us the Torah, Malashon Hara, the Torah is the language of teaching. This teaches us for all generations that the purpose, the ultimate purpose, the whole, the very existence and goal of every Jew is to have an effect on the world. And it comes to tell us also how to do it. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, you have to go out from Beersheva and go to Haran. What does this tell us? Marames, this teaches us in general about the soul coming into the body. The soul is pure life. The soul of every single Jew is pure godly life. Neshama shenatatabi, like we say every morning, the soul you gave me is pure. That's what it means coming from Beersheva. Beersheva is the well from that the seven come out. This is the aspect of Bina. It's the source, the Be'er, the source of the seven emotions of God, of Atzilut. We talked about Atzilut before. The soul comes out of Beersheva, which that talks about the Bina of Atzilut, and there's tremendously internal, pure level of Atzilut, and the soul comes down into Malchut, Charona. The soul is this pure, beautiful Jewish soul, and all of a sudden it comes into this physical world, and it's crying, and it's dirty, and it's longing for food. It doesn't think, what are you thinking about God? It's thinking about fixing up the world. It's thinking about getting some milk, getting a little bit, it's cold, breathing. That's what the soul has to deal with. That's what every soul has to deal with. The soul comes from the essence of God, and it comes into the physical world. It comes into, first of all, it comes to the spiritual worlds. Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, Atabarata, Atayatzarta, Atanafachtabi. This is the language of the blessing we make in the morning. The soul that you gave me is pure. You created it. That's the world of Bria. You formed it. That's the world of Yetzira, lower dimension. Nafachtabi, that you blew it into me until it comes into this physical world. And this physical world, this Charon Avshel Makom, is the burning anger of God. Male Klippas, the world is filled with shells, with concealment, and evil, Sitra Achra. The soul is pure, innocent soul, didn't do anything wrong. All of a sudden it comes into the world, and the world, Malimim and Mastirim, it totally conceals godliness. And all the holy spiritual holiness of the soul. Until even more, it could be that a Jew will come into the world and the world will actually damage the soul. Huh? Why does God do such a thing like that? Leave the soul up in heaven and enough. I mean, after a person dies, his soul goes back up in heaven anyway. So why put him into this world? Why? Because if you do good, you'll go to heaven. He was already in heaven. It's like taking a person, taking $1 million from him and say, if you really work hard and do a good job, I'll give you the money back. Huh? How does that? That sounds great. That's a really good deal. Who's going to say that, right? Give me $1 million, and if you really work hard, I'll give you the money back. Okay? Oh yeah, that thanks. Wow, you're a really nice guy. Thanks. Who would do a thing like that? And that's what God does to everybody. He takes the soul. The soul is billions. It's rich. It's in heaven, basking in the oneness of God, and sends it down into the world. Why? So that if we do good, we'll go back up. That can't possibly be. That makes God very cruel. Says, but the intention is, the kavanah is, Sha'adarav, exactly the opposite, that a Jew who is Yaakov will overcome all of these concealments and these challenges of the physical world, and he will build a house in Israel. Like Yaakov did. He ignored all the bad, and instead, what did he do? With the power that he had from ignoring the bad, that he had to make decisions, hard decisions, excuse me, to always be happy, to always be positive, to always have his eye on the goal. With this, he was able to build a beautiful home in Israel, the foundation of the Jewish people. He even says more, by Yaakov, it says, mitasa shlema, that his bed was complete. Who it is, by means of this, how can he make this happen? By being a soul in the body. By being a soul in the body, like we said, the soul was so pure, but it comes into the body. By means of that, it reveals, by means of doing Torah and the commandments, the essential light of the soul. He transforms physical, the mundaneness, the crassness of the world, he transforms the how do you say, the the ungodliness of the world, he transforms it to nature, natural, and he caused nature that it should be secondary to godliness until it becomes a vessel for godliness, on until that the physical world redeems, reveals godliness. So that's the idea of the soul coming into the body. By means of the soul coming into the body, first of all, the body, it conceals. It's the opposite of the soul. It makes the soul do things that the soul would never dream of doing on its own, to do all sorts of sins and to hurt itself, to hurt people. But if you can overcome these obstacles, then it ends up, not only does the soul become free, but it also transforms the world into a vessel for godliness. Kafisha said, like this is hinted at, excuse me one second. Like this is hinted at immediately in the beginning of Jacob, when he left Beersheba. Yaakov left Beersheba and he went to Haran. Only by means of this Haran, in the direction of Haran. The descent, again, let's go back to the metaphor. To go back to the soul, like Yaakov, comes down into Haran. By means of this, it becomes Vayelech. It says, Vayetze Yaakov. The Yaakov went from Beersheba. Vayelech, he became a mover. He became mobile, dynamic, like we said. They put an aspect of vitality and defiance into the soul itself. Like it's written, V'natati l'cha mahalchim beina omdim. The Yeterim is there, and even more. It says, Vayelech Harona. It doesn't say that Yaakov went to Haran. He went to Harana, means in the direction of Haran. Kevin Shabot Lamata, since the soul coming down in the physical world causes this idea of halicha, going, even in Haran, Atzmo. So it means that it makes, therefore, it doesn't say that Yaakov just went to Haran. Then it would be intention what that Yaakov went up to Haran. Right? The Haran had no effect on him. But Yaakov was not affected by Haran, but Haran also was not affected by Yaakov. Two separate things. But he went Haranah. What does it mean, Haran? He went through, inside of Haran. That it hints at that his going, spiritual going, was drawn into the very source and the essence of the whole being of what Haran is itself. So Yesh Lahosef, we can add on, Shadavar said that this Murumas hints at also the addition of the letter Hey, Charona, and not the Charon. Charona means in the direction of. In Hebrew, really grammatically it's the same. Li Charon or Charona, it's the same. And sometimes if they don't want to put a lam, or God doesn't want, whatever it is, you can put a Hey at the end, Charona. Now in modern Hebrew, they don't use this so much. But nevertheless, that, okay, Kamaimar result, like the rabbis say, Nivra olam hazeh, in the letter Hey, the world was created with the letter Hey. Kolomer, by means of Yaakov going out from Beersheba, this holy place, the essence of the soul, to Haran, this terribly low place, then he reveals in Haran the letter Hey. What letter Hey? The Hey of God's name. This low, terrible level is just a creation of God. Shabon Nivra Olam, that this is, in fact, God creates these evil, terrible places with the same letter Hey that he creates all the good places. Namely, the power of godliness, which enlivens the whole entire creation, the angels and everything. Like it says, the Koach HaPol Benifal, like we say, the power of the maker in the made, the creator in the creation. That you can sense, you can actually recognize in the creation itself that there is the power of the creator. That's how we started the class off. Right? People would go to the Holy Temple, for instance, they would feel that they're being created. And when they would leave, they would feel that they're still being created. There's right. The same God that was creating them at the Holy Temple is the same God that's creating everything all the time. You just don't recognize it. That's the job of Jacob, to come into the world. Now, why God wanted this to be, I have no idea. This is totally not understandable. But we know that it is part and parcel of human personality, and because we're made in the image of God, that people like to watch, a challenge, and they love victory. The sports is a multi-trillion-dollar business, and the better the teams, the more interesting it is. That's part of life. To overcome obstacles is an interesting thing. It makes life worthwhile. People can be depressed when either they feel there are no obstacles anymore or they can't overcome them. The world is just too overwhelming. Some people go into depression when they like succeeded in everything, and they become, these big movie stars or rock stars. They get up to the top, and there's just nothing there, so they feel terrible. There's nothing. They have no challenges. But challenges is the essence of what life is. The soul, as it is in its source, there's no challenges. It doesn't reveal its true power, and it doesn't reveal even more. It's very selfish. It doesn't reveal anything in the world. That's if we can say that there's a flaw in all these Eastern religions, that's it. The Eastern religions are, you just go into yourself, you fix yourself up all the time. That's all you're interested in, is fixing yourself up. And maybe convincing other people to fix themselves up, but not to fix up the world, the whole world, to show the world that God is creating them. Like it says, that's why Jacob came into the world, is in order, the koach hapol, benifal, that God, the life of godliness, will be in the creation itself. This is revealing the whole entire creation. In fact, even more, not that it's in the creation, but the whole creation is just an expression of God, which is above and totally above comprehension. It's so good that it's incomprehensibly good. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's learn the Dvar Malchut, the Yom Yom. English. All right, after you finish eating bread, you're supposed to bless, thank God. But before you thank God, after you finished eating it, but before you thank God, there's something in the middle. And one thing in the middle is you wash the tips of your fingers. You wash your fingers. It says that gets rid of a certain type of egotism, of salt, of melech, Sodom, whatever. Anyway, that's the custom. It takes away some sort of a impurity from your fingers, and while they're still moist, you pass them over your lips to pass them. That's our custom. Have a good day with Moshiach now, God willing. Oh, listen, rabbis. Today there will not be a class at 3:00, but I will put up the Chumash of today. So there won't be a class at 3:00, but I will try when I come back. I have to go somewhere. That's why I came late today. But I'll be back at, I don't know, like 5 or something like that. And then I'll try to put up a class from Malchut Sicha. It's beautiful Sicha of the Rebbe about Yaakov coming to the stone and praying. Okay, have a good day. God willing, with Moshiach now. A lot of good news, and only good news for everybody.
Is